Hi everybody and welcome to another Over the Bar podcast. Today we're going to be looking at the 2019-2020 Bundesliga season. Today joining me, I've got our Bundesliga writers for the website, Rory and Mark. All right, guys?
Afternoon.
Hello.
Right. So what we're going to look at really on the video today is the title race. Obviously with Bayern Munich running away with it in the end. Looking at the other end of the table and the teams that slipped down into the second division, looking at some overachievers, underachievers of the season, maybe as well some players of the season, breakthrough players that probably didn't expect anything from at the start of the year, and we'll also look to next season as well. Right, we'll jump into the title race. Bayern ran away with it again to continue the dominance over the Bundesliga title. Flick coming in during the season, steadying the ship and going to another title. Rory, what did you think of Bayern's performance this year? Was it as dominant as always, or do you reckon there was chinks in the armour for teams to look to exploit for next year?
Starting back to the near end of the season, obviously there was quite a lot of discontent with the current manager, who was obviously Niko Kovac. Don't think the fans had really got on board with him to start with, and when they dropped down to about fourth place in and around Christmas time, obviously there was a lot of uproar. So in came Hansi Flick, completely kind of turned around their fortunes. Obviously at the time, Borussia Mönchengladbach and RB were right at the top. And there was obviously quite a lot of debate about who might win the title this year. And then after that, they completely steamrolled it. Form was incredible. Obviously, kind of brought in a lot of fresh ideas, a lot of fresh talent, and I think obviously, especially after the lockdown, everyone was quite excited about how the title race might shape up. But after about 2 games, it was pretty much done and dusted based on what results happened. So, I mean, you say it was kind of inevitable, but at stages it probably didn't look that way. But going forward, they look stronger than ever already. Obviously signing Leroy Sané, doing their business early doors, and a very solid signing to go along their absolute plethora of attacking talent. So they're looking strong for next season already, I think.
Yeah, I agree definitely on a lot of them points, especially looking to next season, Leroy Sané being an absolute belter of a signing for them, really. Mark, do you reckon Flick was... Do you reckon he's just been a bit of an opportunist man, had been in the right place at the right time to land the job on a 3-year deal, or do you reckon Bayern might have looked to other candidates for that job?
No, to be honest, I think he's perfect for Bayern. To be honest with you, I think if you look in the past, I think Bayern have always done better with managers that maybe don't have such a big reputation. But I know some people would say that Pep Guardiola did really well, but at the end of the day, he didn't win a Champions League. You know, like the last manager that actually won the Champions League with Bayern was Jupp Heynckes, and obviously he came in a similar kind of circumstance to Hansi Flick. So I think, I think it's kind of like a perfect fit, really. Like he's had a lot of experience in the national team as well. I think he was the assistant to Jogi Löw for a long time as well. And I think, to be honest, they pretty much won every game since he came in, like in all competitions. You know, they won the league, they've won the cup, and I think, to be honest, they're probably going to be like 3rd or 4th favourites for the Champions League as well. So you can't really doubt it, to be honest. The players seem to like him. He fits the ethos of the club. They don't tend to like big egos as managers at Bayern. So, yeah, I think, to be honest, they've got a good manager who is perfectly fitted to the ethos of the club, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll stick with you, Mark, for the next question while with you. Would you say it's more of a case of Bayern winning the title, or the rivals around like your Dortmunds, Leipzigs and Mönchengladbach's bottling it to an extent and throwing it away, or do you reckon Bayern are head and shoulders above the rest?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think it's not so much that the players are like heads and shoulders above the rest. I think this isn't like a vintage Bayern side on paper. Like they have really good players, like obviously Lewandowski, Kimmich, along with a few others. But I think it's not a really, really great Bayern side. But I do think Bayern are if you think about in England, like the Man United under the Ferguson times, they've got the same kind of aura, really. Like everyone knows that after in the second half of the season from January onwards is Bayern's time. Like quite often they start the season a little bit slow and then they just come flying for the last 18 games, 17, 18 games. So it's not really a surprise to people here in Germany, to be honest, that they won yet again. I think, there's definitely an element of some teams bottling it, like Leipzig especially, because they were the leaders at winter for the first time in the history, I think. And I mean, some of the results, they were really poor in certain games. I think they drew at home to teams like Freiburg. It's just not good enough, really, for a team of their quality. And I think ultimately Dortmund, they were always playing catch up. I think they had a bad start to the season, and I think it was a little bit too much for them, really. They did have the big chance. They played at home to Bayern, I think, with 5 or 6 games to go, and they lost that game. If they'd have won that, they'd have been within 2 or 3 points, I think. But ultimately, Bayern, when it comes to those big games, there's no better big game team, really.
Yeah, they definitely turned it on. Royal, same question to you. Do you reckon it was a case of Bayern being a standout side, or again, do you reckon the others kind of threw it away a little bit?
Definitely the case of some sides bottling it. It was definitely, especially after lockdown, if you take your chance, hit the ground running. If you're Bayern, if you're Borussia, if you're RB, or even Mönchengladbach, if you hit the ground running, then who knows what could have happened. Obviously, Mark alluded to that big game. I think it was a midweeker, obviously the Klassiker between Dortmund and Munich. I do remember watching it, and it wasn't the greatest of games, and there was a few kind of standout highlights. One of them was a potential handball from Boateng in the area, and I know that was at 1-0. And if that changes around, if VAR spots that was a huge moment, I reckon, in the title race. I don't know how it wasn't spotted. To me, it was pretty crystal clear. So bit of fortune, but that sometimes you got to create your own luck. And then after that point, I just don't think any team really believed that they were going to catch him. It's a bit different when there's, you can cut it down to 1 and 2 points, or slightly less than that. If you're 1 win away, then it's not too bad. But after that, I think all teams kind of lost belief. And again, like Mark said, Leipzig just drew too many games, lots of games where they just all over the teams, and then just threw it away, whether they drew or even lost the games. Mönchengladbach, really exciting team to watch, but slightly like Chelsea, they're a bit hit and miss at the moment. And some games they would just get spanned 2 or 3-0. But in other games, you think that they've got genuine bags of potential. So I think it's just down to consistency and Bayern just knowing what they're doing towards the end of the season. Been there and done it, obviously 7 times in a row previously. So they know what the feeling's like, and they've got match winners like Lewandowski, Kimmich, all the bags of experience in midfield, new signings like Goretzka as well, absolutely spot on. So I think they just knew when it came, push came to shove, Bayern, I think we were pretty confident that they would get over the line eventually.
Yeah, I agree with most of that. You're saying a lot of it will be psychological at the end of the day. If you 1 result away, it gives you that bit of belief. As soon as it gets 2 or 3, then you're not banking on Bayern in the second half of the season really slipping up that many times. What we'll do is I'll look at surprise packages, positive and negative within the league. So we'll sit you for this one, Rory, first. Who would you say were your biggest overachievers heading for this season? Who your surprise package?
Tough one, really. I think a few teams did themselves, justice this season. I know Mönchengladbach, like I was just saying, they're a really good team to watch. Been kind of in and around the European scene recently. And again, they were kind of flirting with the league title, which is obviously quite above and beyond what they had been doing recently. And I also think that Union Berlin had a very solid season considering how new they are to the league. they also have, like, had a very solid campaign. But for me, kind of outstanding, like, newcomer or best kind of season probably be Mönchengladbach. They look really exciting going forward, I reckon.
Yeah, and obviously me not following Bundesliga as much, it's a bit hard for me to make, like, obviously a statement like that as well. But Mark, we'll come to you for your who do you reckon your outstanding achiever for this year?
Yeah, to be honest, there were three teams that stuck in mind, and two of them I agree with Rory. I think Gladbach, like, to get Champions League was a really good achievement ahead of teams like, I don't know, like Leverkusen, for example. Like, to be honest, Gladbach, they're a big club, but I think they don't really have the finances to kind of support a Champions League run, you know. And I think for them to get top four was a really, really good effort, yeah. But I think as well as Union Berlin, I'm going to say Freiburg as well. Yeah, Freiburg, like, they're like a really, really small club. You can probably compare them to like a Bournemouth, to be honest, in England, you know. Like, they have a small stadium, it's a small town, you know. I think and usually they're kind of a yo-yo club, you know. They go between the first and second division. I think they're on a bit of a roll at the moment, but this year they finished in the top half, which was a really, really good effort for them, you know. Like, most people would have had them down as probably third or fourth favourites for relegation. I think they played they're mostly a pragmatic team. They're not the most attacking side in the Bundesliga, but I think, they had a really, really good season this year, and yeah, they've got to get some plaudits really for that. Yeah.
Yeah, on the flip side, we'll come back to Mark on this one. Who would you say your most disappointing side of the year, like your underperformer were?
Yeah, to be honest, I think Dortmund have got I mean, if you look at the quality that they have on paper, I know they finished second, but I still think it's not good enough, really. And I think a lot of people here in Germany, they want to see the back of Lucien Favre now. I think, I don't know, like, if you look at the team that they've got, you know, Sancho, Royce, Haaland coming in January, you know, some of the results just weren't good enough. And I think this year on paper, there wasn't that much difference between Dortmund and Bayern. And in the end, Bayern won the title by, I think, 13 points, you know. And yes, at times it was close, but I still think it was a disappointment from Dortmund, yeah. And I think the other team that sticks in mind was Werder Bremen as well. Like, they're one of the kind of big clubs in Germany, you know, like 45, 50,000 every week. Like, really, really big fan base throughout the country. And I think they were also the longest standing team in the Bundesliga as well. Like, I think the Bundesliga was founded like in 1952 or something. And they were the team that have played the most Bundesliga seasons up to now. And obviously they only just avoided relegation in the end. So you've got to say they had a really, really poor season. They were pretty lucky in the end, to be honest. The fact that Union Berlin beat Dusseldorf, yeah, they were lucky with that, because obviously if Union had won that, then they'd have been relegated. So, sorry, if Dusseldorf had won that, then they would have been relegated. But yeah, I think those two teams really. Also, probably Hertha Berlin, they spent a lot of money as well this year. I wouldn't say they massively disappointed, but maybe they would have hoped to finish around 6th, 7th this year, really. Whereas they finished like 11th, I think. So you'd say they disappointed a little bit, I guess. Yeah.
So would you agree with that, Rory, or is there anybody else that stands out for you?
For me, I think it was probably between two teams, one of which Mark said, one being Werder. They were complete shambles for the majority of the season. And just after lockdown as well, they decided to kind of sort themselves out when it mattered. Which kind of just goes to show when they get all their players on the pitch, they've got a squad capable of easily competing in Bundesliga, let alone being in the bottom three. So they were very lucky, obviously, just winning their relegation playoff match on away goals against a relatively unknown Bundesliga 2 team. So yeah, they were huge underachievers for me. And then the other one for me would have been Schalke. Especially if you kind of split the seasons up into two halves. first half of the season they were pretty decent in and around the European spots, and then after that they completely crumbled. Their form was shocking, especially again after lockdown. They just didn't turn up. Really poor. Their captain, I believe he's an American. He was the only one really pushing them forward. And then obviously the managers have been coming and going with regularity at the club as well. I think they still finished obviously comfortably in mid-table. But regardless, from the second half of the season, they're a complete no-show. So they're the main two for me. Obviously, Dortmund, naturally, I think that's obviously a big point about them being, they're always supposed to be the nearly lads, and they've still not been able to get over the line, especially recently with such a good team that they have. But yeah, I think for me, one of the two, either Werder or Schalke for sure.
Yeah, so all mentioned like good points there. Like the one for me, obviously looking from a bit of a further afield on Bundesliga is Dortmund. You look at the quality like through the spine of that team. Gerke, decent keeper, Hummels, Witzel, Sancho, Royce, Haaland up front. They did finish like quite considerably far behind Bayern in the end, didn't they? And they probably expected to be a lot closer come the end of the season. Right, so moving on, we'll start looking at who for you guys were the standout players of the season. So if your headline makers like Lewandowski's, obviously Haaland, Sancho, who for you stood out this year as being your player of the season? We'll start with you, Rory, on that
one. For me, in terms of the outstanding player of the season, obviously it's really hard to look beyond Lewandowski. Like he's been breaking every record there is to break. 34 league goals this season. Like absolutely fantastic season. Just a match winner. Makes the difference when on rare occasions when Bayern weren't playing well. He would just turn up and his goals are absolutely crucial. So yeah, in terms of an outstanding player-on-player season, it'd have to be Rory Lewandowski. Obviously, honourable mentions for the likes of Werner and Sancho. Obviously, Werner played in a team where he was always going to get lots of chances. I think his finishing can sometimes be a little bit to be desired. I remember watching one game after lockdown, and he probably could have had 6, 7, and then he still got himself a hat trick. But obviously, there's the difference between himself and Lewandowski's levels. Obviously, him moving to Chelsea will be really interesting to see how he develops. Sancho obviously just goes from strength to strength. Like his ability to beat a man is world class now. He's obviously going to fetch an extremely hefty fee if he leaves Dortmund, and he'll obviously leave a massive hole. But yeah, for me, the outstanding player is pretty simple one to choose for Lewandowski.
Yeah, cool. So I don't think many would argue with that, to be fair, but we'll see if Mark wants to offer up a different opinion on that and goes with somebody else. But who do you reckon, Mark, or do you think Lewandowski as well?
Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer, really. I mean, I think Lewandowski's had one of his best ever seasons, really, this year. I think he got I think he averaged a goal a game. I think he got 34 in 34, yeah. I mean, that's just ridiculous stats, really. I think, he's by far the best player in the Bundesliga in terms of influence and game-changing and things like that, But I think, there are some other players I want to mention as well. I think I really enjoyed watching Leverkusen this year as well. And I think, especially towards to be honest, Kai Havertz, he didn't really have a good start to the season, but I really enjoyed watching him like the last 10, especially after the lockdown, he was really, really good, the last 10 games or so, And I think Leverkusen are one of the best teams to watch in the league. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, he's probably going to leave in the summer, I would imagine, which is not good for the Bundesliga as far as I'm concerned. I think another player that had a really good year for Leipzig was Sabitzer as well, the winger. I think he put on a lot of assists for Werner. I think also in the Champions League, he was really, really impressive as well. I think he deserves a mention as well, Sabitzer for Leipzig. But other than that, yeah, I mean, Haaland probably didn't play enough games to get like in the top 5, I would say. Obviously, when he did play, he was really, really good. But I mean, I think he only ended up playing like 12 or 13 games in the season. So, yeah, but it's Sancho, yeah. I'm still not quite convinced that Sancho is ready to go to a top Premier League club, though. If I were him, I'd stay for another year or two at Dortmund, to be honest, and just make sure he's definitely ready for that big move, you know. Because he is a great player in the Bundesliga, but I do believe there is a step up between the Bundesliga and the Premier League, you know. I mean, we've seen it from players before that have struggled once they've actually made the move, you know. So, yeah, but I think, yeah, Sabitzer deserves a mention as well on top of that. And Kai Havertz as well. Yeah.
Yes, there's a few surprise names in there, isn't there? Moving on to say, look at breakthrough players of the year. So obviously, look at the younger players that have come like burst onto the scene this year. Mark, is there anybody who has come through this year that you think's got a bit like a bright future in the game?
Yeah, I think obviously a guy, Alphonso Davies is the standout name for that for Bayern. I mean, especially again after the lockdown, he really, really came into his own. Like I think at the start of the season, he was just a kind of sub-impact player, but I think by the end he was starting to get some real minutes under his belt, and he was really making a difference in some of the big games. You know, like a really great player, and I think so. Yeah, I think he deserves a mention. I think probably Haaland as well. You've got to mention in this topic. You know, I mean, if they can keep him over summer, which some people have talked that he could potentially move on if the right bid is made, because obviously one of the big problems with German football is the fact that the clubs are all too willing to sell if the right price comes in, you know. So I think, he's definitely going to be one to watch for next season as well. Yeah. There are also some players down at the bottom of the league as well. Like I think a guy like from Augsburg, Niederlechner. I think he got 16 goals for a struggling side. So I think he deserves, he's not a young player, but I think he's just come up from the second division. So I think he deserves a mention as well. Yeah.
Yes, I've caught Davis a couple of times, and for a youngster, the power and the pace that he's got, like I saw like a few clips, and we were giving like right wingers like a 5-yard head start and just absolutely breezing them for pace, and looks like he's going to be quite a standout player for Bayern over the next few years. Rory, is anyone on top of, like Mark said, a few of the names there? Is there anyone else that's caught your eye, or do you reckon Mark's covered most of them there?
To be fair, I think there's quite a lot knocking around in the Bundesliga at the moment, which is pretty exciting. Probably outstanding one, like Mark said, is probably Alphonso Davies. The way they tore Chelsea apart in that first leg of the last 16, like Azpilicueta is probably still having nightmares about that one. They absolutely tore him apart. So yeah, he's going to have a big future. Maybe at the top end of Bayern's attack, whether it's Breakout, because he's probably well known enough as Serge Gnabry. He's had a really good season, been more consistent now, rather than kind of firing in a couple of goals and then having a few quiet months after that. He's a bit more steady and reliable now. Another couple of strikers off the top of my head, one being the young American playing at Dortmund, which is Reina. He's come in and formed a bit of a trio with Haaland and Sancho up top. Very young, bit like a Christian Pulisic sort of situation. Maybe not quite as direct as Pulisic, obviously developed in terms of his game, but a couple more seasons at Dortmund, and I think you'll be seeing a bit more of him in the news. And then probably another one who's got a famous father in the game is Lilian Thuram's son, who's been playing up top, obviously with Mönchengladbach. Formed a very good strike partnership with I forget his first name, but it's Plie as well, and they've been a really exciting team to watch, as mentioned. So any one of those, really, I'd say. My favourite or number one pick would probably have to be Alphonso Davies, though, because he's been outstanding.
Yeah, it's interesting how he develops over the next few years, won't it? And so you both touched on the next question, really, with regards to like transfers. And so me and Matt were discussing it before we came on. about transfers out of the league, and is it a concern? We'll start with you, Mark. Obviously, it was a topic that you feel strongly about. Do you reckon it's a concern for the league when you see players like, obviously, Werner's already confirmed for going, Sancho heavily linked with the Premier League, and so with Kai Havertz, is it something that concerns you as a Bundesliga fan?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, obviously early on we talked about Bayern's dominance, and I think this is one of the main reasons, in my opinion. Like, contrary to what a lot of people think, I do think Bayern is a really well-run club. I mean, I think they're not really a money club as such. They're just a really well-run club, and that's why they've had the success. But at the same time, I think a lot of they have been helped by the fact that really, really big clubs like Dortmund, Schalke, Leipzig nowadays, although most German people would disagree that they're a big club, but it's yeah, I think at the end of the day, if the right offer does come in for these players, they will sell, And I know there's been a lot of talk in Germany in recent years about changing the 50+1 rule, because obviously I think most of you probably know that in Germany the clubs have to be owned at least 51% by members, by the fans. And any investors can only own 49% of the club. And that's like a rule in the German league. So basically, it massively reduces the amount of spending power that these German clubs have, So take a team like Man City or PSG, like you couldn't have that in the Bundesliga, Like some people would say that's good, but other people would say it just leads to even more of a monopoly for the big clubs. And I think in Germany, the problem is there's only one kind of major top level club, And I think, yeah, I understand why these clubs keep selling, because they kind of have to keep the money ticking over, But at the same time, it is sad for the Bundesliga, because obviously this year for a long time it was really competitive. But now all of a sudden Leipzig are going to lose key players, Dortmund are going to lose key players. Probably Mönchengladbach will lose key players as well. And then all of a sudden you're back to square one, You've got Bayern who is signing, and the other clubs who are selling. So it's a big problem, really, in my eyes.
Yeah, and I think obviously the fees that we're seeing for players as well. And if you look at, apparently we're not willing to go higher than £50 million for Sancho, and you compare some of the fees for players in like years gone by. The one that stands out for me is the Dembele from Dortmund to Barca transfer fee was ridiculous for its time. Do you agree with what Mark was saying, Rory? And do you reckon that the coronavirus could have an impact on the transfer fees, and you could see players like Sancho possibly this time last year could have moved about 100 million going at a cut price?
Yeah, definitely. I think COVID-19 is going to have a huge impact on the transfer business and dealings, especially in the Bundesliga. Obviously, this is going to be from country to country, but I know lots of clubs in the Bundesliga and Bundesliga 2 are obviously, fearing for their future. And obviously, we've seen it slightly on a local scale with how obviously Wigan have gone into administration as a result, of lockdown and things like that, the loss of revenue. So, like a lot of league teams are going to have to sell at cut price tags, I'm afraid. So, I think there's going to be a mass exodus from the league, which is obviously not a good thing for the Bundesliga as a league in general. I think the only kind of mega big transfer that's happened in recent years where there's been a bit of competition for players when Haaland went obviously to Dortmund, and I think quite a lot of people were probably shocked by that, because there was a lot of big clubs in the hat for him. I'm sure Real Madrid, Man United were linked with him as well. And usually speaking, especially in recent years, quite a lot of players have chosen other leagues for the prestige and things like that. But fair play to Haaland for making that decision. But yeah, so I think it is a bit of a worry in terms of how many players could potentially leave the Bundesliga this season, and then going forward, it's going to have a negative impact, because only really Bayern Munich have got the financial strength to say no. Like if we're saying that even Borussia Dortmund, who obviously are in theory a title contender, have got to say yes to a cut price deal for Jadon Sancho, who in theory is worth about 100 million or 100 million euros. It's a worry because then it's just going to mean that Bayern are just going to cruise to another title next year, and it's just not going to be that competitive. So yeah, I'd say it's a massive worry for next season.
Yeah, so I think it's a case of watching this space now, really, as well, into it, and seeing who goes and for what fees, and obviously play it by ear. Could happen to the Premier League. A lot of the Premier League players could end up moving on cut price deal. Obviously, your top end players will be fine, but your lower league, lower level teams are going to struggle. I'll have a look to next season now. I don't think it's a Bundesliga got a start date confirmed yet for next year. Do we know? Have they confirmed anything yet?
I'm not aware of an.
Or is that still
No, I think there's been no date officially put down yet.
Yeah. We'll have a look to next season anyway, whenever maybe. So seeing a few changes. Well, there's obviously going to be the change to relegation side, like relegated sides going down. And then we've got Bielefeld and Stuttgart coming up. Do you reckon one of those sides, Mark, could make a bit of a stamp on the league, or do you reckon they both could struggle to stop up next year?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, in the Bundesliga, it's always hard for newly promoted teams, actually, because, again, one of the main reasons is because they can't spend the kind of money that some of the promoted teams in England do. I think this year you had Aston Villa, they spent £90 million on players, and they're still probably going to go down. Next year you'll be looking at teams like Bielefeld. They'll be lucky if they spend £9 million on players, to be honest. They probably won't spend that much. So I think it is difficult. Historically, a lot of the teams that get promoted are yo-yo teams in the Bundesliga as well. If you look this year, you've had Paderborn went straight down. Last year, you had Nuremberg went straight down as well. This is quite typical for the Bundesliga, for teams to go down. At least usually one team goes down that came up, I think Stuttgart might have a better chance because I think they've got a bigger budget, So I think maybe they can. The team that they've got at the moment won't be good enough, though, because they were really lucky to go up, actually, this year, Stuttgart. They were... Even though they got promoted, they didn't have the season that they would have expected, to be honest, and they relied on other teams messing up, really, for them to go up. So I think they will get a few deals over the line, and they might have a chance of staying up. But I think Bielefeld is going to be really hard, to be honest, especially without the fans probably at the start of the season. And I think it's going to be hard for them to kind of rally themselves and get enough points early doors,
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So, Rory, do you reckon that's pretty much an accurate assessment of what's going to happen next season for the promoted sides?
Yeah, for the promoted sides, yeah, it's going to be a tricky enough season without your home fans being able to enjoy being back in the Bundesliga. Obviously, it being a big thing. Again, like Mark alluded to, Stuttgart probably have a better chance of surviving. Obviously, that slightly more formidable history in terms of the Bundesliga themselves, and I know, so they were fighting out for automatic promotion with the likes of Hamburg, who obviously had themselves ended up messing up and not getting themselves promoted. So yeah, without that home support and it probably taking a while to get used to that next level of Bundesliga quality, and the fact that the teams that you probably expected to go down have gone down. So the level of quality is no different from last season. There's no one hugely unexpected being relegated after obviously Werder Bremen just about clung on. But if you're looking at the fact that a team like Werder Bremen were near the bottom of the Bundesliga, then you're going to be looking at Stuttgart and Bielefeld thinking they're going to be struggling, because when Werder put their mind to it, they put 5 and 6 goals past teams right at the end of the season. So they're no mugs. So yeah, I think they'll both struggle, to be frankly honest. So I'll be surprised if either survives. But yeah, we'll have to see.
Yeah, it's a case of watch that space again. And still you with this one, Rory. Do you reckon it's another case of Bayern winning another title next year, or do you reckon Dortmund could close the gap, or like Mönchengladbach, Leipzig, could they come back into the fray next year? Or do you reckon it's Bayern's again next year?
I mean, I'd love to say someone else just for the sake of changing things up and not being boring, but the way that the teams are shaped, the way that, especially this transfer market, you think of how the teams finished, and as Mark said, the difference between the two teams in terms of points, what it finished off as. If you're using that as a gauge, then Bayern have already added a £50 million player in the kind of shape of Leroy Sané, and then you look at the next best team in theory is Dortmund, who in theory could lose one of their best players in Sancho for a cut price deal. Then like the teams below Munich are going to have to go so hard in the transfer market to even get close. It would rely on Munich having a season where they just implode, where again something might go wrong with the managerial side or something like that. But at the moment, everyone at that club is happy the way it's being run. They've got all their stars tied down to contracts. Can't imagine any of their players going outwards to other teams right now. I think Mönchengladbach, if they can keep hold of their players, they might be able to push up from around that fourth position to maybe challenging again. Might see them slightly more established for a longer period of the season again. If they can get that exciting team playing well, then that'll be a good watch. But yeah, I'd say Bayern by a relatively comfortable margin, but then maybe throw in someone like Mönchengladbach to possibly come second.
And Matt, would you agree that? Do you reckon we could see Bayern overthrown next year?
Again, to be honest, as much as I'd love to say that they won't, as a Nuremberg fan, as much as I'd love to say that they won't win it next year, sorry, I think, yeah, to be honest, it's looking like one of the most one-sided leagues, to be honest, yeah. Because Bayern now, the back end of last season, they were just outstanding, to be honest with you. There's no doubts about it, really. Like, they were beating good teams like 3-0, 4-0. Like, they hammered Leverkusen in the cup final as well. And I think, to be honest, they look like a really good side now. Yeah, as Rory said, a lot of the players have improved over the last year, like Gnabry, guys like Alphonso Davies coming. Sané might even struggle to get in the team at some points, to be honest, because like they look really, really good the back end of this season. And I think, to be honest, they could even go close to winning the Champions League now, actually. I think, yeah, the other problem is that other teams are going to be selling, and it's going to weaken them. And I think Bayern are only going to get stronger. They've got a manager who really fits the ethos of the club. Like, the players like him, which is really key at Bayern as well, actually. The players like the manager. Because if you look in the past, he really hated Ancelotti, and he didn't get them anywhere, you know. And there was talk that they didn't really like Kovac as well. So I think they've got a manager that they like. And I think, yeah, to be honest, I think they could win it by 20 points next year easily. If I was to put a bet on second, to be honest, second is a more interesting thing than who's going to win it, to be honest. I would say quite often I would actually go Leverkusen for second next year, to be honest. I really like the look of their team, and I think the second half of last season, they came on really strong.
Is that going to be dependent?
Sorry?
So is that going to be dependent whether they keep Havertz or whether they lose him or not?
No, I don't think so, no. I think obviously Havertz is a good player, but I think Leverkusen, like a lot of German clubs, they have really, really good they have like feeder clubs in countries like Austria and like, I don't know, Eastern Europe and stuff. And they do manage to get good replacements for these players, you know. But the problem is that the replacements usually aren't quite to the standard of the guys that they sold. So I think they will find a good replacement for him, but I think they've got some other really good players in there as well, like Bailey, Tar at the back. They've got a really good side actually, Leverkusen. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the case of it's probably going to be Bayern's to throw away next year, but we'll wait and see. We'll wrap things up there for our Bundesliga review 2019-2020. And thanks to Rory and Mark for joining us. I'm sure we'll do some more recaps of all the leagues around Europe as and when they finish. So Premier League and La Liga are coming to a close, and Serie A a few weeks after that. So we'll probably do recaps of that. If you want to catch us in the meantime, if you want to read any of the articles we wrote, especially Rory and Mark's about the Bundesliga, If you want to check us out at www.otbfootball.net, as you can see. And we are also on Twitter as well, at OverTheBarFB as well. Again, thanks Rory and Mark for joining me, and we will catch you all very soon.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.